Now we'd head to our final panel session for today, and this is, of course, expanding on the conversation that Dr. Joe Abah has started to speak about. Africa without borders, building African companies with global footprints and sustainable growth models. Our next speaker is a dynamic C-suite finance professional recognized for his strategic acumen, operational excellence, and transformative leadership. As Executive Director, Finance and Chief Operating Officer at CWG Plc, he plays a critical role in shaping financial strategy and optimizing operations to drive sustainable business growth. Please, a round of applause as I welcome our own Chief Operating Officer here at CWG Plc. A round of applause for Mr. Afolabi Sobande as he joins us on stage. Thank you. Our next panelist is CEO and co-founder MDaas Global, a company on a mission to provide convenient, affordable, and high-quality healthcare for Africa's next billion, starting in Nigeria. As CEO of MDaas, this person I'm about to welcome oversees company strategy, fundraising, and operations with a focus on building strategic partnerships with equipment suppliers, hospitals and clinics, employers, and health insurance providers. Please, a round of applause for the CEO of MDaas, Olusoga Oni. Please, a round of applause for Olusoga Oni as he joins us on stage. And to facilitate the conversation, our incredible moderator is the founder and principal partner at Mosron Communications. She's a communications strategist who helps brands articulate purpose and impact. Known for her clear, grounded moderation style, she brings a calm authority to every conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome our moderator, Tolulope Olorundero. Please, a round of applause for her as she comes to moderate the final panel session for today. And after this, we have one surprise for you, so please don't be in a hurry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Sess. Centralized. I'm a public relations professional, so it would be very off for me to leave it that way. Thank you. So, yes, please sit in the middle. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure we're all looking forward to going home. It seems like it's been a long but very interesting conversation. And it's fortuitous that we have Dr. Joe Abah, who has led the intro into this last panel session, because how else should you end than by the chief priest that we recognize very well in the African tradition to lead the conversation into the solutions to Africa without borders. How do we scale African companies? Dr. Joe has mentioned several examples of African companies that have done incredibly well for themselves. How do you, as a founder here in this room, take your business beyond the borders of Africa? And so we'll first start and get perspectives of our two other panelists. Why is scaling difficult from your perspective? Operations, and then, of course, building a business.
Thank you. Scaling in Africa, number one thing that makes it very difficult is limited market data and insights. You want to go into a new market, you struggle to get the insight that you need about your competitors, what are your chances of success, and it makes it very, very difficult. But I believe now that it's going to get better with AI. You are able to work with data because as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, you need to take calculated risk. And calculated risk are on the basis of the data that you have for you to be able to take that. And I think that that's the major thing that we need to work on as Africans, to be able to gather data and be able to use that data wisely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, so before we gather data, though, as Africans, we must be willing to give that data.
I completely agree.
Yeah, dare I say that if you are in this room, I think that QR code that was showed up stage now, if you have not taken either a screenshot or you clicked on that link, perhaps you are one of the challenges we are having in Africa in getting data, right? Yeah. Okay, Olusoga, you want to go? Why is scaling difficult for African companies?
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. I think scaling a business generally is hard, and scaling in Africa is even harder. I think one of the reasons why it's harder is because of there's a lot of fragmentation. I think, just for some context, our business recently scaled to Cameroon, and I think we learned a lot from that process. Number one, there are real cultural barriers, particularly between Anglophone and Francophone West Africa, that we don't think about, even though we're culturally the same people, but over time we've developed this fragmentation between our peoples. Two is that, like and I think Dr. Abah made reference to that, is that we have this massive bureaucracy in Africa, right? Which the point of the bureaucracy is the bureaucracy itself, right? So when you go to a new country and you're trying to register your business with it, the long, it's just so long. And I used to think that Nigeria was bad until I entered Francophone West Africa, which has even bigger bureaucracies. So I think that there are real challenges with this. I think with things like the trade, it's getting better, but to be honest, it's still yet to be implemented properly. So maybe as some of this barrier drops, it will be easier to scale within Africa.
Okay. So, because we must be patriotic, I like to always put a caveat there. Because we are so familiar with our problems, sometimes we think that we are the absolute worst things. Until you get out there and you realize that, okay, wait, I think my problem is still manageable. This one is beyond my capacity. So whatever you're thinking about the challenges you're facing in your business now, can I please mention, just like Olusoga has said, when you attempt to scale, then you will know that I think Nigeria is still fair. It can be better, but there are bigger issues and fishes that you need to deal with outside here. Let's talk about the solutions. We are very familiar and intimate with the problems that we have on the continent in terms of expansion and scaling. By the way, a simple synonym to scaling is expansion, because sometimes we use these terminologies and they seem almost beyond reach. If we're talking about scaling, it's really just expanding the footprint of your business across one market. Let's talk about the role that technology plays in expansion. And I'll start with Dr. Abah. From a governance and policy perspective, how can institutional frameworks essentially support expansion for businesses in Africa?
Thank you. Like I said, issues of governance and policy are actually quite important because they affect us all. We don't pay enough attention to it. We pay more attention to the politics. And the politics is about who is going to win in 2027. We don't pay attention to, okay, when that person wins, what do they do with the power, which is the governance aspect. And even if you are Dangote, the world's richest black man, a very simple policy can render you poor in a very, very short amount of time. So we need to take governance much more seriously than we do. And, Soga was talking about the issues of bureaucracy and how things are just difficult. People just make things difficult. But you can use technology. A lot of the times that I've seen, whenever you've used technology, for instance, to computerize a payroll, you never go back to a manual system. When you've used technology to manage payments, it's a lot easier to trace. At least you know where the monies are going to. And even when somebody disables the system, you know the last person that logged in to disable that system. So I think the use of technology, the use of artificial intelligence, the use of robotics are ways in which we can actually address some of those barriers and make scalability a lot easier.
Fantastic. Just an example, stories are always important. I'm sure after now you will remember these stories. But for those who are very active on social media platforms, we know that for a couple of years, Elon Musk was the richest man in the world until he had this fallout with the President of the United States. And that's total net worth reduced, where if you focus on the person and not the policy that drives governments and governance, you may find yourself in a place that you don't like.
I'm actually very proud that I predicted that Elon Musk will fail within 6 months of going into government, because again, He came with a private sector arrogance into a sector that he doesn't know. So again, when we are scaling, we need to be sure that we are scaling into an area that we are familiar with and that we know.
Fantastic. That's the work of a chief priest anyway. You predict what others cannot see sitting down. Olusoga, I'm very interested about how technology can scale service businesses. I'm a service provider myself, and I've always thought that product-led founders and entrepreneurs have this pride, as it were. There doesn't seem to be a clear understanding of the peculiar challenges that service businesses face in scaling. I mean, I can scale a product or just distribute product, but how do you distribute service, essentially, with technology?
Yeah, so that's something that we do really well at my company. Just a little bit more context, we run a network of clinics, diagnostic clinics across the country. And I think that the role of technology typically is not to, you cannot sell the technology to someone who wants to pay for it. But if you're building technology, you can use it to reduce the frictions within your businesses in a way that, you can stop the leakages, right? And I think it's so important because when you're running a business at scale like we are, you cannot put people in charge of everything, right? So you need technology and processes to help out with that. And I think that in healthcare particularly, the role of technology there is that process, is to make sure that you can guarantee a type of service that in terms of a patient can come into your facility and get the kind of service. You can benchmark every single touch point, from payments to when they go to a doctor's room, and you can know how long they spend there. You can improve the processes. I think in healthcare, that's how we say it. And because of that, we can scale because we're not worried about how to manage the clinics. Pretty much technology helps us manage our clinics much better. And I think that for service businesses like ours, I think the role of technology is to guarantee that service, to make sure that we can benchmark, to make sure that we can do things at scale. And that's how we use technology.
Interesting. Mr. Sobande, CWG provides the infrastructure for all this service. Let's make it practical, please. I don't understand all the grammar. I'm a public relations professional. I'm not a technology person, but I run a business. Give me practical examples from CWG's services.
Okay, so for CWG, one of our mantra is you solve the real problem. So what exactly is the real problem? You are not providing service just for the commercial use. You are solving the real problem that businesses are having. So if you take a service organization, you want to focus on people. You want the management of the organization to focus on their core business, while we provide technology for you to be efficient. I think essentially it's about efficiency in the use of technology to help you to achieve your objective. Also, what we do at CWG is what we call the last mile delivery solution. You look at what is the end user and what is the objective of that end user. And the focus from the very beginning of your engagement with the customer or the client is to ensure that the end user gets the desired result through the use of technology. We make it very simple. You want to move from point A to point B. Technology will help you to be able to move from point A to point B. You want to deliver excellent service delivery. You want to have your customers being attended to within 5-10 minutes, whatever the SLA is. That is the problem, and that is what we'll use technology to resolve.
Fantastic. So if you're a founder, you have a business here, and you're wondering, how do I engage CWG? I want to become a CWG customer. We have a sales champion here that can absolutely direct you. Because, I mean, wouldn't we want to close some sales after Tech Excellence? They are not mutually exclusive, I hope. All right, let's go to something also that seems to be a peculiar challenge for us in Africa. Ecosystem building and partnerships. It looks like we all love to work in silos. It's my own. I own 100% of it, even if it's just 0.001% of that market. But at least I own 100%. How do we leverage technology? How does ecosystem building and partnership thinking come into building businesses that will scale beyond the borders of Africa? Dr. Joe.
Okay, thank you. So, so partnership is quite key. I work in an international development consultancy firm, and believe it or not, we competitors meet every quarter to basically ask ourselves, okay, what is going on in the industry? How are you addressing it? We also jointly bid for work. Even as competitors, we come together and bid for work, and quite often are successful in doing so. So I think if you look at most technological innovations, there are very many components that is very difficult for one person to produce. And so if you're talking about mobile phones or vehicles or computers, there are various components that you need a value chain in order to produce. And so we need to start thinking about that. Yes, it's your own. Yes, you want to be identified with it, but I think you could also look at research about how many startups or family-owned companies in Africa actually survive the founder. Very, very few do. And so if you have that protectionist mindset, more than likely the business will not go beyond you. So we need to start to think in that way that yes, we want to protect our image, we want to protect our ownership, but as the saying goes, the sky is big enough for all the birds that want to fly without them colliding into each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. Olusoga.
Yeah, so I think that's very important. I think when we were trying to scale outside Nigeria, one of the things we did was we were open to getting a local partner and giving them equity in that company in their own country. And it wasn't just paper equity, it was actually real equity we were giving them, because we think that if you want to fly, you need partners. If you want to do it all by yourself and make all the money all by yourself, it takes you much longer. Yeah. And we felt that was a better way. And given our experience so far, I think we wouldn't go to a different country except we have a strong local partner, because that's, I feel like, the biggest leverage if you want to scale your business beyond your initial country, is that partnerships. And I think that, even locally, our business is really built on partnerships. We partner with over 2,000 doctors and hospitals around the country. So it has to be win-win. So you need to be able to say, you know what, for each partnership, 1 + 1 must be equal to 3. Because you also need to create value that you're going to share, right? So partnerships are very, very important to scale across your borders.
That's an interesting mathematical formula again. Now 1 + 1 has to be equal to 3. It's no longer 2. I hope you remember that as you build your business going forward. Mr. Sobande, to close out on this question, Texcellence is an example of ecosystem building and partnership in the industry. What lessons can businesses in your industry learn from how CWG has put together Texcellence?
So for Texcellence, and what I would say is that it's all about collaboration. You grow more when you collaborate with others. Like Dr. Joe said, you need to understand your ecosystem. Your ecosystem also includes your competitors, your customers, and clients. The more you are able to think about the ecosystem, the better for the organization. And I think that Texcellence is a good platform for most people, because we collaborate with a lot of our partners. We do the same business. We are competitors in some areas, but we collaborate and we grow better.
Fantastic. So can I please invite you on behalf of CWG Plc to Texcellence 2026. Please make sure you register somewhere. Finally, because if we're scaling Africa, if we're thinking Africa beyond borders, one of the things we must be willing to scale is timeliness, right? And so I want to make sure that we end this panel before that timer says time up. It's a rapid fire, and I'm just going to ask you your sincere response to this. If you could take out one barrier in Africa today that will aid scaling businesses, what would it be for you? I'll start with Olusoga.
Visas.
Okay. That's very rapid. Visas. Visas. Dr. Joe.
Policy.
Policy, okay. And you?
Interoperable payment system.
Ah, we don't understand that. So
Okay, seamless transfer of funds within Africa.
fantastic. So we have visas, we have policy, and we have seamless transfer of funds. You can know who the business person here because he's focused on the money. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and attention this afternoon. Please put your hands together for our panelists for a fantastic discussion. Please let's stand for the pictures. Thank you.